because we're attending, thinking that we would turn this into much more of a workshop rather than a formal presentation. So we're going to talk about them. We're also going to do things. We'll break into partners and try some things out. And we'll see if we can give you some tools that will help everyone. So you may have seen up here, it says that the theme of this is protecting chi, thymus, and love. And yes, that is what we're going to be talking about. But what that really is the immune system. And so you may have heard the term before, psychoneuroimmunology, which is a fancy word that they coined in the 90s when they took a bunch of other words, smashed them together into this big one that basically says the mind and the nervous system influence the immune system, right? And in Western medicine, this was like a new concept. And in Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine, they went, of course it does. We've known that for thousands of years, and all of our training is based on that. So today we're going to talk about the immune system, because that's a subject that people ask me a lot about, and a lot of people are concerned about this thing, right? How do we defend ourselves from a virus? How do we make sure that our body stays healthy? What can we do to make sure that we are in our best possible shape all the time? But we're also in this gorgeous 5-element kind of space, which means we're also talking about water. And so I want to kind of also take this and look at how do we use this information to code and change our body. So this morning, for those of you that were here this morning when we did our blessing down by the Seder tree, it came up about how we set an intention, right? Our body is mostly water, right? We're all cucumbers with anxiety. So my body is mostly water, and that water in my body has lots of different forms. That water in my body takes the form of lymph, or it takes the form of intracellular fluid, right? The water that's inside the cell, or it takes the form of blood plasma, or it takes the form of cerebrospinal fluid. But they're all really water with a few little bits added to them that make them something else, right? So we have all of these different kinds of water in our body. And what I wanted to relate to you today was something that you maybe haven't heard before, but would probably resonate with. I'm willing to bet everyone here has seen Suryamoto's water crystal pictures at some point. Yeah, all right. So we know from those pictures that he was able to kind of put an intention into a drop of water and see how it would change the crystalline structure of the water. And he was doing this in like the late 80s, early 90s. There's another gentleman who maybe you haven't heard of because he hasn't been as popular, but his name is Gerald Pollack, if you ever want to look him up. And he wrote a book called The Fourth Phase of Water. So in school, we get taught water has 3 phases, right? So what are the 3 phases of water?
Steam, water,
right? A solid, a liquid, and a gas, right? It comes in ice, water, or steam. And he said, yeah, it does, but also water has a 4th phase. And you know when you leave a glass of water out for a while, there's that space, you know, around the edge of whatever is containing the water. You know how it gets kind of slimy, right? What's causing that slime? There's nothing in the water, it's pure water, but there's this sort of, it's almost like a gel, right? And he says, okay, look, water, when it meets up against another substance, comes up with something that they call the exclusion zone. And this is where water forms a gel-like substance. There are chemical reasons why this happens, and you can look up his stuff if you're interested in it, because it's elaborate. I'm not smart enough to talk to you about it. But basically the format is when water is structured into a crystalline matrix, then it becomes like a crystal, right? So water, when it is up against something else, has the properties of a crystal. And so when we think about the water in my body, if I'm, what did we decide? 98, 75, 86, whatever percentage water we are, depending on whose stuff you read, whatever percentage water I am, none of that water is just like a body of water. It's all up against something, right? It's up against my veins, it's up against my lymphatic capillaries, it's against my eyeballs, it's against something that is providing some structure. Therefore, the water in my body is not really water, it's crystal, right? And they've done experiments with this when they talk about the, I mentioned before, the intracellular fluid, right? So if I have a cell, and if I puncture a hole in the membrane of the cell, If the cell was full of water, kind of how they make it sound when you learn about cells in biology, like there's little protein structures when there's water, right? If it was just full of water, when you punctured a membrane, all the water would leak out, and you would end up with like a squashed lid balloon looking structure. But it doesn't. You can remove the membrane of the cell, and it'll actually hold its shape for quite some time. This is bad for the cell for a lot of other reasons. If you've read Bruce Lipton's stuff, you go, well, you just basically gave the cell a lobotomy. It has no brain anymore. It can't function. But it does maintain some structural integrity. So we know this is made of a gel. So why is this important? Think about what crystals do, right? So properties of crystals. A lot of us are wearing crystals today, or have some at home, or something of that sort. Crystals can store information and energy. They can transduce information. Transduction, when we're talking about physics, means the converting of energy from one form to another. Crystals do this when we use them in liquid crystal screens, right? Or when they're used in a radio or something of that sort. They convert energy from one form to another form. So they hold energy and information. They change energy and information. They broadcast energy and information. And all of the water in your body is crystalline in nature. So that means that it is constantly picking up, holding, storing, transmitting, transducing, transforming information and energy. Okay? So then the messages that we are using to code those cells become really important. So we'll kind of come back to this idea a few times as we go. But I wanted to give you an idea of how I usually am working with things in my office, because I work with specialized kinesiology or energetic kinesiology, which is using muscle testing as a form of biofeedback to figure out what's in your body. So when people come to see me, it's like we're using muscle testing to go, where is the stress that allowed this set of symptoms to happen? We're removing that stress and relying on the fact that your body can then, once the stress is gone, use its own innate healing nature to balance itself out, right? So the healing that happens isn't something that I do, it's something that you do once the stress has been removed, right? The same way that if there's a block in the flow of water, I can't make the water flow, but I can remove a rock. And if I remove the rock, everything moves the way it should. So those are some of the premises that we're working on here. Now, when I'm working with someone, I'm using muscle testing. We don't have really the time and space to be doing a full workshop on muscle testing today. So instead, what we're going to do is use some principles of somatic awareness and noticing, so that we can kind of check in with ourselves, with a partner later on, and see how they're doing, how we're doing, and then see if we can notice a difference in some of these little techniques. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Excellent. So, just to kind of bring this back for a second here, I wanted to talk for a moment about the thymus. Are you guys familiar with what your thymus actually is? Okay. It's not one of the sexy organs. It's not one you hear about, right? Like we hear about the thyroid, we hear about the brain, we hear about the heart. Nobody talks about the thymus. It's partly because it's not that fancy. If you look at this in an anatomy book, it will basically tell you that the thymus is very important for small children for their immune response, but that as you get older, it begins to atrophy, starting at like puberty, begins to atrophy until it's basically just a little mass of fat sitting behind your sternum. And that you don't really need it as an adult. I don't know about you, but I've been around long enough that when medical science tells me that we don't really need an organ, I've started to become skeptical. You don't really need those tonsils, oops. You don't need that appendix, oops. You don't need those glial cells, that's a whole other conversation. Like there's all of these times when we're told, oh, that's a vestigial organ, we don't know what that does. It's just sort of a bit that's left over that's important for children, but not for you as adults. Not so. The thymus isn't as crucial for adults as it is for children. Your immune system will still function without it, but it functions differently. And in other medicine traditions, in the Chinese medicine tradition, in the Ayurvedic tradition, they knew that the thymus was a center for immune system coordination. So one of the things that happens in your thymus is it works as a training ground for T lymphocytes. And I'm gonna geek out pretty hard here. I'm gonna try to keep it in check. If I start losing you completely, again, there's like 10 people here, just be like, no, and let me know that I've lost you. But for your immune system to work properly, your body needs to know a couple different things from your lymphocytes. One, it needs to know, will it attack an invader? And the second thing it needs to know is, will it not attack you, right? So your body needs your immune cells to be able to attack viruses and bacteria and not to attack your healthy cells. And so it basically puts them through boot camp and it trains them, and then it checks to see, will these cells work in this way? And if they fail either test, if the immune cells won't attack an invader, or if they are attacking you, then your thymus actually induces what's called apoptosis, which is a fancy word for makes the cell self-destruct. It just initiates the self-destruct code, cell dies. So that's the way it's supposed to happen. Now, obviously, because we know that lots of people have autoimmune conditions, this doesn't always happen this way. It's complicated. There's lots of mitigating factors that get involved here. But the thymus sort of has this overall influence. And I just wanted to read you, because I really like this little quote. So the thymus is the primary lymphoid organ of the immune system, but listen to this. The cells of the thymus provide for development of T cells that are functional and self-tolerant. Therefore, one of the most important roles of the thymus is the induction of central tolerance. What does this mean? They use this phrase in medical literature that the thymus is responsible for self-tolerance. And self-tolerance in this context means the ability to recognize and not attack yourself. Now, I work in energetic realms where things have metaphorical symbolism. And I feel like the ability to recognize and not attack ourselves is something that a lot of us maybe struggle with, right? A lot of us have difficulty with self-tolerance and not attacking ourselves. And that is a key component to immune health. So we're also going to keep that in our pocket while we're working with this stuff about the heart chakra and how our thoughts and feelings influence our immune system, right? So the idea is that when I'm operating from a place of condemnation, criticism, blame, all of that, I have no self-tolerance. And if I have no self-tolerance, I can't respond effectively and properly to the people around me either, right? And the same is happening with any kind of invader of the energy system. If I'm responding to things from this place of self-criticism, self-blame, self-denial even, then I can't respond properly to a threat that is bacterial or viral or something like that in nature either. My entire immune system becomes weakened in that way. So that's one thing that's kind of interesting here. Another little hint that we get that the thymus is more than just a little fatty mass that's left over here in the chest is when we actually look at the root of the word. So I'm a big reader, I'm a word geek. I like to know where things come from. And the word thymus actually comes from the Greek root thymos, which has interesting meanings. It means anger or heart, soul, desire, or life. And they used to think, the Greek philosophers, Greek doctors, thought that the soul resided here, right? There was, I looked up a biblical definition site which talked about it as being an outburst of passion or wrath. Wikipedia links it to the idea of spiritedness, and it's used in context like if you have a spirited debate with someone, like a conversation where there is passion, right? It's not passive in any way. So there's this, there's an association with breath or with blood as well. When you look up the connotations here in Homer's works, like the Iliad and the Odyssey, the thumos, this word, was used to denote emotions, desire, or an internal urge. So there's a lot happening energetically and emotionally when we start talking about the thymus. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I was telling Emily earlier, I had been thinking that I would print off this little kind of reference material for you guys. And then I realized that in this kind of format, nobody wants to be handed a bunch of papers. So what I've done is I put them on my website and a blog for you. It's a PDF you can download. I'll make sure that you get the link if you're interested. So if you want reference material later, you can have it. And if you don't, we're not, just wasting paper and creating garbage and all of that sort of thing. Okay, so the thing is, and what I find interesting, if I hadn't said that we were talking about the thymus, when I started reading off all of those definitions, the idea of it being the center, the spirit, the spirited debate, the passion, the desire, you would have thought that maybe I was talking about the heart, right? In a Western culture, we tend to associate the heart with those things. And the heart has a huge amount of overlap with the thymus in this context. Now, again, in Western allopathic medicine, we've relegated the heart to the role of a pump. Blood goes in, blood goes out. That's it. This is the heart. But my work all has a foundation in traditional Chinese medicine. And in TCM, the heart is the emperor. And an emperor is a very different connotation in your head than a pump, right? The emperor's job is, first of all, to oversee everything. And then to tell everyone else what to do. The emperor doesn't do a ton. The emperor delegates, right? So the emperor is noticing, it's perceiving, it's making decisions, it's sending out edicts and declarations, it's making things happen. I don't know whose word that is, but it's the kitten's now. So when we are looking at this, we talk about how the thymus might have a role in overseeing immune system function, right? And the heart might have a role in kind of controlling what's happening with the thymus. And so we can see that whatever's influencing our heart can be really important in making sure that our immune system is working properly. So I would love for us to try something quickly here. We'll start with just sort of a moment of self-noticing. So take a second and just kind of check in with your body. And when I say check in, notice things like, are there any areas of pain or tension? And if there is an area of pain or tension, maybe just bring attention to it for a moment. And if you feel like it, put a number on that, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being I'm completely at ease and 10 being I'm in so much pain I can barely move. Where is that pain at? And then once you've got that in your head, also check in with maybe what your energy level is like. We just had lunch. Some of us get a little sleepy after lunch. So think about, where's my energy level? Where's my focus? How clear do I feel? All right. So once you've got those ideas in your head for a moment, I'm going to walk you through this quick little exercise. Now, this is an old school applied kinesiology exercise. Some of you may have seen it before. And it's sometimes called the 4 thumps through a thymus thump. Has anyone seen this? Okay. So this is really simple. We're going to start by crossing our hands, and you're going to thump on this point here under the collarbone. And this is, it's not a touch, it is a thump. You're actually putting a little bit of pressure there. You can hear it in my voice, right? And so as you do this, we're going to take a couple breaths. Three sets of breaths. Okay, and then once we've done that, you can make sort of a light fist, or you can just use your fingertips again. And you're going to kind of go up and down on the sternum. And again, we're going to do 3 sets of breath. You feel so inspired. When I do this with little kids, I get them to do this with the Tarzan, like, ah, kind of thing. Whatever floats your boat. All right, and then the last one, we're going to hit a point on the sides. It's basically just near the bottom of the rib cage. You can do it like this, or if it feels more comfortable for you to cross your arms and give yourself a little hug, you can do it like so. stop and check in. And just notice, first of all, if you had any areas of pain and tension, have those changed. And has your energy level changed? Has your feeling of focus and clarity changed? Did anyone experience? Okay, so this is a very simple thing that we can do that instantly changes energy flow in our body. So why does this work? This is basically working with like acupressure. These points here underneath your collarbone, these are called kidney 27s. This is the last point in your kidney meridian, right? And your kidney, because this is a water day, you know, your kidney is the main meridian inside your water element in TCM. It is the home of your Jing, like your deep kind of energy flows. It's where all of your lineage energy lies. In fact, like fun fact, in TCM, your bones are actually considered to be crystallized water. Your teeth are the surplus of your bones, and they used to describe the brain as being marrow. So it was like the brain was just the gunk that fills up the cranium, right? And so all of this was ruled over by the kidney, which makes all water element stuff. So when we're tapping here, we're stimulating that kind of energy in the body. When we're tapping here on the sternum, we are stimulating the actual thymus as an organ and bringing its attention to what's happening around us. And when we're tapping here on the ends, we're actually on the end of the spleen meridian. And the spleen meridian in TCM works with immune function. So it is digestion, so it might help to clear up any cloudiness after eating. But it's also about your ability to resist infection, your ability to defend against invaders. So this is a really easy kind of thing that you can be working with if it helps. So when we do something like this and we combine a physical movement with an intention, then we start to program our body in a new way. So this time, you know, we were just doing it with the intention of kind of seeing if there was a difference. But even the act of measuring creates an intention that changes the result, right? If you guys have read anything with quantum physics, you know, they talk about the observer effect and that sort of thing, how, you know, that famous double slit experiment, right? Simply deciding what we're measuring, whether we're looking at things as being particles or waves, changes the way that the experiment works. It changes what appears on the other end. So when we set an intention at the beginning, when we notice our pain, our energy, our focus, those sorts of things, we bring the body's attention. We've anchored the bones. And we bring the energy to that, and then that is able to kind of resolve, right? So when you make this a part of your routine and then add to it an intention of being at harmony with your environment, being protected, being open, whatever it is, right? Whatever speaks to your heart right now, then that allows us to start changing the way our body sees things. So I wanted to take this into another place as well here. And talk about the concept of Wei Qi. And has anyone heard of Wei Qi before? Okay. So Wei Qi is slightly different than the Qi that maybe you're more familiar with. So like if we have, okay, so believe it or not, this is a person. It's a very Matisse looking person, actually. Yes, here. All right, so now we have abstract art and it's great. So look, in Chinese medicine, we talk about qi as being something that flows through the body. And people tend to think about qi as being inside meridians, right? When we do something like acupressure or acupuncture, what we're doing is we're hitting little tiny bells that adjust the flow of qi in that meridian channel, which then changes the way that our body feels about stuff. So that's one explanation, but in reality, qi energy is produced by all of our cells. It is everywhere in our body, especially in our fascia. And it's just that there's a little more flow to it. We can regulate it differently within the meridians than when we are looking at it through other tissues. So that's one kind of qi. And, you know, we have these meridians that kind of run in our body, you know, down, and then another meridian is going to run back up, and there's this different flow and we can adjust and play with that flow. But Wei Qi is unique in that Wei Qi is like simultaneously inside and outside the body. So the Wei Qi actually lives within what they sometimes call the tendinous muscular meridians, which are a little bit different than the meridian system that you're working with acupuncture. It's much more about the fascia and about kinetic changes. And so your Wei Qi is simultaneously inside and outside. It's close to the surface. And it is sometimes called Wei Qi, but it's also sometimes called defensive Qi, protective Qi, right? It is Yang Qi. And so it's a little bit more aggressive than the Yin Qi that we find in the blood, for instance. So this has to do with our immune system, but also our energetic immune system. Okay? So what do I mean by that? If we take this into Chinese medicine for a moment. In Chinese medicine, there's no difference between the diagnosis and the symptoms. So what I mean by that is that in allopathic medicine, we would say you have a virus, which is making you cough and full of mucus, right? In a Chinese diagnostic technique, they might say something like, well, you have an excess of water. You have a wet condition, which is mucus, right? Mm-hmm. Or it might be that you have a condition of wind, or a condition of dryness, or a condition of heat. Right? It's not that you have a fever, which is creating heat. It's that you have a surplus of heat. Right? So how do we deal with that? We would deal with that by cooling it down. Put some water in there, right? So they call these things the pernicious influences. And the pernicious influences, heat, dry, cold, right? These are things that can throw our body system out of alignment, throw us out of balance. And then our job is not to try to find and target and destroy a specific bacteria or virus or something of that sort, but rather to bring in whatever would be the opposite of the condition so that our body can deal with it, right? Take out the rock, let the body heal. So they talk about somebody who has strong Wei Qi as being able to defend themselves against the pernicious influences. So I found myself looking this up because, if we go back in time to end of 2019, people are starting to freak out about this virus. You may have heard of it. It's been in the news a little bit. It's basically a cold. I don't know. But I was reading about this because I'm always really interested in concepts of resiliency. Because there have been plagues in history. Scary ones, like Black Death, right? Scary plagues. And what interests me is this: in every pandemic, plague, whatever you want to call it, that has happened in history, there are people, doctors, nurses, midwives, regular people, who walk through it unscathed, right? They treat the sick, they take care of people, they move through it, and they don't get sick themselves. Why does this happen? Why do some people seem to have this supernatural ability to kind of move through it without being hurt themselves? What is the superpower that's charging their immune system? Because, back in the day, it's not that they were like swinging echinacea or NAC or whatever people are doing right now, ivermectin. They weren't doing that. There was something that was keeping them balanced and able to defend. And so I came to a couple conclusions. One is that they have strong Wei Qi, because in the Chinese tradition, when you have strong Wei Qi, because this is an energy that is actually outside of us as well, they would say that you actually part the bacteria, the virus, they wouldn't call it that, but that you basically move unscathed through the pernicious influences, right? There's this concept that people with a strong energetic field can walk through it and defend themselves against a pathogen before it even comes into their body. So before your non-specific and specific immune responses have to happen, you're already defended. So, to me, anything I can do that allows me to defend myself against a bacteria while it's out here, instead of when it's in here, is a good thing, right? So that was one thing. And the other thing is that the people that seem to be able to do this consistently would talk about compassion and having a colleague. Right? They're the people who feel called and compelled to help others. So what activates our heart chakra more than anything else? It's that feeling of love. But not love like romantic love like the agape love like the love of humanity. It's the love of your neighbor. It's the need to connect, the feeling of compassion, the inability to sit by while you suffer, right? That's what makes this energy big. And in the Ayurvedic tradition, they also have what they call a higher heart chakra, right? There's the heart chakra, it's the one that shows up as green. We look at the rainbow on the person, right? But there's this higher heart chakra, which its other name is the thymic chakra. And only when the heart chakra is actually open do you activate the other one in that tradition. That's fascinating, right? That means that in order for my immune system to be at full capacity, I have to be open and loving and full of connection here on this heart level. It doesn't work otherwise. So things that we can do in order to kind of bring this up and make this work properly. I think for the workshops where we get into like elemental theory in higher detail, and we talk about the Dan Shen, the ability to bank energy, but really the concept is we need to have our energy full, and then once our energy field is full, we are able to kind of push some out, right? Which then gives us this defensive chain. And I want to point out again, there's no differentiation in this field between the attack that's coming at me from a virus, let's say, a parasite, a bacteria, whatever, or bad energy, you know, somebody draining me a little bit. I mean, one of the things that I see, I don't know if this applies to you guys, but it's something that I see with my clients here. People come here, they start doing their own work, they become more energy sensitive, suddenly they can't tolerate other people anymore, right? I hear a lot of people, I go into a crowd and I immediately have a headache. I go to a party and I'm like out for a day afterwards. I'm exhausted. People are exhausting. Were they always like this? Yeah, they were. It's just that you're so much more open now, right? Suddenly you're feeling all of this energy. Okay, so it's great that you're open and you're able to actually take this up from other people, but how do you keep yourself defended? Especially if you're in a field where you need to be interacting with people energetically, if you're a practitioner of some sort, right? So you want to be able to work without taking on someone else's stuff. Out of curiosity, does anybody feel like they have an issue with that? They take on other people's stuff when they're working? Yeah, okay. So, a couple definite yeses and like a sort of over there. Working out of it. Yeah, awesome. When I first started doing this kind of work, I started at a center where I worked with this woman who was an amazing guru type, and she taught me all kinds of stuff. But I was like 25 when I started working with her, 26. And the first thing she did was she was like, well, I'm gonna tell you right now, one of the first things that'll happen is you're gonna gain 20 pounds. I went, okay, not that there's anything wrong with that, but why? Right? Like that's just an odd statement to make. And she was like, your body is gonna need to put on some protective weight. I thought, oh, I mean, at the time, I just thought that's very strange. Now I look back at that and I go, what an interesting belief system you've acquired for yourself, that you have to put on physical protection to balance out an energetic stress. Wouldn't it be easier to put on an energetic protection to balance out an energetic stress? Like and all of that? Tell me about it, basically, at that point. So we want to be able to kind of work with this concept of Wei Qi and build this up. So when I teach this in classes, I'm working with people who are already doing muscle testing. And we've got some formats and things that we can work with in order to identify, first of all, is there Wei Qi stress? And secondly, why is there Wei Qi stress? Is it from an electromagnetic sensitivity? Is it genetics? Is it your own emotional state? What's going on? Because we don't really have the time to go into all of that, I think what we're going to do instead is work with, again, kind of a noticing, and then see if we can do a little exercise that will help us to balance it out. So let me see how many people I have that will be participating. 2, 4, 6, 8, We have even numbers on this. Okay. So one way of knowing if you have an area where you have a Qi imbalance is, do you have a spot that seems to be a chronic issue for you? Especially if it is, and again, if you're not familiar with TCM, this might not quite make sense to you, but if it's somewhere in the metal element. So in traditional Chinese medicine, the element is your lungs, your large intestine, and your skin. And the metal element is the protector. It's your shield and your sword. It is what provides a barrier between you and the not you, right? And if you think about those areas, your skin, very much the barrier between me and the not me. But my lungs, when I breathe, the outside is inside for a second, right? I can't, it's just here. I'm suddenly taking it all in. So that requires a certain amount of defensive energy. It has to be able to, again, identify anything that's impure and lock it down, get rid of it before it creates any toxicity in my body. And people who grow up in areas where there's a lot of pollution, you have a lot of problems there. People who smoke or do something that's going to deteriorate those mucosal membranes, we see issues with the lungs, right? And the large intestine, which is literally full of waste. We don't want that being absorbed back into the body all the time. So again, definite boundary that has to happen there, right? So if you have consistent reoccurring problems with either skin, lungs, or large intestine, that can be a sign that your Qi is in a balance. And in Chinese medicine, it is the lungs that propel this energy outward and actually kind of maintain this barrier. So that can be one sign. Another sign is, where do you normally notice it when, like if you do feel like you take on other people's stuff or something like that? Some people manifest that as they take on the symptoms of the person that they're working with. So I work with someone with a headache and now their head feels fine, but I hurt right here. Other people, it's a very, very persistent kind of symptom. Every time I have to deal with people, I have a stomachache or whatever it is. So if you notice that there's a persistent symptom, that can be also a sign of the Qi. So what we're going to do is learn a very easy, quick technique for kind of shoring this up. Is this technique scientific? No, it is not. Is it reproducible? Is this? So, and honestly, this works better if you have another modality at your disposal that lets you see why the person is stressed and remove the stress, right? Because otherwise what happens is we make people feel good, but then the moment they go back into their situation, whatever the situation is over here, they can, you know, be worn down again. But this will still help. So what I would love to do is demonstrate with somebody quickly and then set you up in pairs to go ahead and work with this. So would anybody like to be a victim in the room?
I can.
Okay. I know we kind of met earlier, but can you remind me?
Phoebe.
Okay. So when we talk about meridian flows, we have meridians that run. We have meridians that run in Chinese medicine. Yang meridians that run from the head down to the feet. These are, for instance, the stomach, the gallbladder. We have yin meridians that run from the feet back up to the torso. These are ones like the spleen, the liver. We have then yin meridians that run down the inside of the arm, like the heart. We have yang meridians that run from the hands back up to the face, like small intestine. So our energy makes this sort of flow where it goes from one meridian into the next, bringing yang energy down from the sun, bringing yin energy up from the earth, balancing itself out. Now, remember I said before, we've got these meridians that flow inside the body, but the Qi is sort of outside of the body, right? So I don't have to be inside the body to affect the Qi. I can do it from outside. So we can do something that we call a meridian massage as a Qi correction. And so in order to do this, I'm going to take a moment first. Actually, first maybe I'll just ask you, do you feel like, because you had your hand up before when you said like, you tend to take on people's stuff. Is there a certain area in your body that you feel it? Are you feeling any of it now?
I get it like in the top of my back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I get it, I like my energy feels depleted and I have to like go and have a lot of time by myself to like re-go my energy again. Right. More than just the usual introvert. I would much rather have a snack and a book than doing this stuff. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to take a moment, just make sure that I feel really centered. And if you've ever done exercises where you've kind of made a little energy ball with your hands, for a second. All right. And so I'm going to start. If we were looking at an acupressure chart, the bladder meridian runs down the back. We start with that because it's the one that's a little different than the others. And I'm just going to slowly, not touching, but you know, within a couple inches of her body, run down her back. And I'm going to do this 3 times. And then we talked about how to use circuit. So I'm going to have her stand with her arms just slightly up to the side. And I'm going to make a circuit. I'm going to start with her face. And then down the outside of her body, like the yang meridians do. And then up the inside of her, like the yang meridians do. Down the inside of the arms. And a lot of people will tell you they can feel where you are, even though you're not touching them. And in order to give you guys more time to work, and because I know you're going to get caught up in one at once, but everyone can see it. Can you feel it already? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the last step, so you're going to do that 3 times again, that circuit, right? The last step is you come to their side. Okay. And basically now tracing the central and the governing meridians. And if you forget where they meet and you tuck them up over the head, that is okay too. Allow you to do that. And so then again, you can have the person kind of reassess. Do they feel anything? Do they notice any difference? Okay. Mm-hmm. My head's tingling so much. Excellent. Okay. Well then, thank you. And you can sit, and then we'll have you pair up with someone who will finish it for you. So let's just remember how that circuit goes. So that's why I got this board up here. So step 1, we're going to go down the back. Step 2 is down the outside of the body. The lateral side, you do anatomical positioning. Okay, that's for the yang meridians. 3 is up the inside. 4 down the inside of the arms. 5 of the outside of arms back up to the face, right?
Can you explain for the person that's doing it how they can prepare themselves?
Okay, let me put the last 2 steps on here and then absolutely. Okay. So then we move to the side of the body. And in front and behind. Meet over top. Okay, hopefully that's clear. I understand that my writing gets slantier and stranger as I try to lean over and do this. Okay, so remember we're making those circuits and you're going to do this circuit. So this is times 3, times 3,
times 3. 3 is the magic number in almost all modalities. I don't know why. It means completion. Okay, so how do we prepare ourselves as a giver in this? I usually would take a moment, first of all, to set the intention that my channels are clean. So I really like to kind of think, I was working yesterday with an older woman who doesn't speak any English. She was on my table and she was saying, she only speaks German, and she was saying through her translator that she can feel a lot of energy. So I must be giving her a lot of energy. And I'm like, you're feeling it, but I'm not giving it to you, right? It doesn't come from me. It comes from here, it comes from here. I sort of have the mindset that I'm like a set of jumper cables, right? So if the battery is dead in a car, we can jump the car with another car, right? But the energy doesn't come from the cables. You need the cables in order to direct that flow, but it's not coming from them, right? And that's how I see myself, is I'm just connecting you to other energy. So then it's not like I'm giving you mine, right? It's just a channel. So you can think of yourself as a channel, and you can kind of make sure that you have this sort of flow here in your hands. And then the other thing is that, you know, I'm showing a flow here, but in reality, it doesn't always look like that. I might find that, oh, when I come up in this space in your back, it feels so sticky. I just kind of want to stay here for a second, right? Okay, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to breathe. Maybe I'll tell you to breathe. And then finally, it seems like it'll move. And then this next bit goes really quickly, right? So in general, I tell people to start with a really slow progression, but as you get used to feeling it, or if you're already really energy sensitive and you feel people's energy, when you notice those spots where it's sticky, where it feels stuck, where it's hard, where it's not receptive, where they hold their breath, whatever it is, be there for a second, right? And let it shift. Does that help at all? Okay. Do you guys have any other questions, or do you want to try? Let's try. Okay. So grab a partner and just run through it. You know, it'll only take you 2 minutes each, really.
I suggest that people get their phones up.
An excellent idea, as that is definitely one of the things that scrambles our electromagnetic fields. Okay. Are we ready?
Do you want to partner up? Do you want to partner up?
If you can't remember something or feel stuck, I'm here to help. Let me down.
The
last couple of days just finish up. We're kind of running to the end of our time today. So I have written down my new website, just Kinesiology.com. And if you go to the blog page, then there's a little section on this stuff that we were just doing today, and there's a PDF that you can download if you want things like the reference for the Thymus stuff and how to work through some of this stuff. It is set up there for you. And also I put my email on there for you, which is just happy@alexis.com. So if you have questions or anything like that, you can get in touch. Does anybody have anything, just, I know we're at the end of our time, anything that they want to share super quick about how that just went for you? How did it feel? Yes. Yes.
I mean, I didn't actually do the exercises, but I felt a shift in the feel of the room. Yeah, even just the periphery. Yeah, just really, really beautiful. Shifting.
So, I mean, the feedback I often get from people is that it allows them to feel more confident in their work with others. It allows them to cleanse. It allows them to feel protected, right? And if we feel like we're cleansed and protected when we go out into the world, working with people, then we're able to do better. As practitioners, as friends, it's better.
I felt like that was like a cloak. Like it felt like a silk cloak, which was being like draped over my body as the energy was being like moved down around me. Yeah, as well as I can explain it, but it's like a big protective cloak.
Yeah, I mean, I call it the energy blanket. When I'm working with my kids, right? It's like, okay, we're just gonna put on the energy blanket, right? It does. It feels to keep it wrapped up. Okay, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm gonna hang out with you the last few things here. So if you have questions or anything like that, please just grab it. Thank you. Yeah.